My name is Miles. Fresh out of college with a degree in architecture that's yet to prove itself, I landed in a city that chews up dreamers like me. It's a tough place to start over rain-soaked, sky-high rents, and utterly indifferent to anyone chasing visions. I'd crashed in the dorms for a few weeks after graduation, scraping by on instant noodles and freelance gigs, sketching blueprints for local startups. The pay was decent enough, but nowhere near what it took to snag one of those glossy downtown lofts my classmates flaunted on social media. I needed something affordable, quiet a spot to think, not just crash. My budget was razor thin, and after days scrolling through overpriced listings, I started picturing myself in some damp basement share with 3 strangers and a mold issue. Then, I spotted a handwritten ad taped to the window of my favorite laundromat, right by the coffee shop. The ink was a bit smudged, but the words stood out: room for rent. Second floor, utilities included, quiet tenant preferred, privacy respected, contact Nora. No phone number, just a scribbled email at the bottom. It felt old school, almost sketchy. But desperation has a way of blurring those lines. I jotted it down, fired off a quick message from my phone, and expected nothing. Most landlords around here demand credit checks and your firstborn as collateral. To my shock, she replied in under an hour. The email was brief, formal. Come tomorrow at 6. No promises. I choose my tenants carefully. Her tone was firm, almost chilly. I pictured a stern, gray-haired lady in a cardigan, probably with a cat and an endless list of house rules. I shot back that I'd be there, then spent the rest of the day wondering if I'd just signed up for a lecture on thermostat settings. The address led to a quiet suburban neighborhood, streets lined with ancient trees and houses that had weathered a few decades. It wasn't far from the city, but it felt like another world. No horns blaring, no crowded sidewalks, just the gentle patter of rain and the scent of wet earth. I parked my beat-up old Honda, wipers squeaking, and double-checked the number. The house was 2 stories of wood, with a sagging front porch and a tangle of climbing vines up one side. Not fancy, but tidy, the kind of place that felt lived in, not staged. A single light glowed in the front window. I took a deep breath and knocked. The door swung open, and there she was, Nora. Not the grumpy grandma I'd imagined. She looked maybe early 40s, though the fine lines around her eyes might have suggested otherwise if you stared too long. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a loose bun, stray strands framing her face like they had minds of their own. She wore a simple white blouse, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and dark linen pants that moved with her like they'd been tailored just for that. Barefoot, with unpainted toenails, she stood with a quiet confidence, as if the house belonged to her in ways that went beyond ownership. Her deep brown eyes sized me up, not unkindly, but with a sharpness that made me stand a little straighter. "You're Miles?" she asked. Her voice was low and steady, with a hint of warmth underneath, like she was holding it back. I nodded, wiping my damp hands on my jeans. "Yeah." I saw the ad for the room. She stepped aside, gesturing me in. "Come see it, but don't get your hopes up. I'm picky." The inside smelled faintly of cedar and rain, the floorboards creaking under my sneakers. It was orderly, but not sterile. Stacks of books on a side table, an unfinished sketch on the coffee table, a steaming mug of tea on the counter. She led me up a narrow staircase, her bare feet silent on the wood. The room was small, but perfect. A simple bed with a comforter, a desk by a wide window overlooking the backyard garden, and a shelf of dusty novels. The view was all green vines and rain-soaked plants. "It's quiet here," she said, leaning against the doorframe, watching me take it in. That's how I want it to stay. No parties, no loud music, no parade of guests. I live alone. I like it that way. I nodded, already picturing myself at that desk, sketching late into the night. "Sounds like me," I said. "I'm not big on noise either." She tilted her head, her eyes lingering on me a beat longer than politeness required. "We'll see," she replied. $800 a month, utilities included. But if you're serious about staying, we can talk." The way she said it wasn't flirtatious, exactly. But there was something in her pause, in how her gaze held mine, that quickened my pulse. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice even. "I'm serious. I think I'm exactly the kind of tenant you're looking for. She didn't smile, but the corner of her mouth twitched, like I'd passed the first test. 1 month trial, she said. Move in tomorrow. We'll discuss the rest later. I nodded, my stomach twisting with something I couldn't quite name relief, maybe, or the spark of something more. As I left, the rain picking up outside, I glanced back. She stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the porch light, watching me go. I moved in the next day, my Honda loaded with a duffel bag, laptop, and a crate of books and sketch pads. The rain had eased, leaving the air thick with the smell of wet leaves and soil. Nora's house looked just as it had, peaceful, unassuming, vines dripping from the morning mist. I hauled my stuff up the narrow stairs to the second-floor room, the wood groaning under my sneakers. In daylight, the space felt even better. The window let in soft gray light, and the garden below was a lush tangle, like something from a painting. I set my laptop on the desk, hung a few shirts in the closet, and tried to shake the feeling that I was stepping into someone else's story. Nora was downstairs when I finished unpacking, in the kitchen pouring coffee into a chipped blue mug. She was dressed simply again, white blouse, dark jeans, barefoot as always, hair in that loose bun. "Settled in?" she asked without looking up from the pot. Her voice had that same calm edge, like she was always one step ahead. "Yeah," I said, leaning against the counter, feeling a bit out of place. "Thanks for this. It's exactly what I needed." She glanced at me, her brown eyes sharp but not unfriendly. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "Let's see if you can handle the quiet." That first week blurred into a rhythm of routine. I'd wake early, work on freelance designs at my desk, the soft rain tapping the window like company. Nora was a ghost in her own home present, but never intrusive. I'd catch glimpses of her. Mornings, tending the garden in a faded sweater, her hands quick and sure around the plants. Evenings, curled on the porch with a book, jazz drifting from a small speaker. The music was mellow, wistful, like it carried a weight heavier than the notes. I stuck to her rules. No noise, no mess, no guests. It wasn't hard. I wasn't there to party. I was there to figure out what came next. Our exchanges stayed brief, cautious. A nod in the hallway, a good morning over coffee, a quick wave passing her on the porch. But each time, I noticed her a little more the way her fingers gripped her mug. The faint lines at her eyes when she smiled. How she moved like the house was an extension of herself. There was a quiet beauty to her, not loud or flashy, but undeniable, like a painting you only appreciate up close. I told myself it was just noticing someone you live with. Deep down, though, I knew it ran deeper. One evening, I saw her on the porch, her outline softened by the glow of a single lamp. She was reading, legs tucked under her, a glass of red wine on the table beside. Jazz played low, something slow and raw, and the air smelled of rain and vines. I hesitated, then stepped out, sketchpad under my arm. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, my voice quieter than I'd meant. She looked up, her eyes catching the light, and for a moment, she just studied me. "Sure," she said at last, nodding to the chair across from her. "But don't expect me to entertain you." I sat, flipping open my pad, pretending to tweak a client plan. But my eyes kept drifting to her, the way her fingers traced the book's edge, how her lips moved slightly as she read, like she was murmuring the words to herself. "What are you reading?" I asked, mostly to break the silence. She held up the book, a worn poetry collection, cover too faded to read. "Neruda," she said. "Better in Spanish, but I get by." Her voice warmed a touch, like she was sharing a small secret. "You speak Spanish?" I asked, surprised. She nodded, setting the book down. "Enough to manage. Learned it painting, traveling for work, mostly South America." Her tone was casual, but there was a weight to it, like she'd brushed a memory she didn't want to linger on. I wanted to ask more about the painting, the trips, her, but something in her posture said to stop. Instead, I said, "I sketch houses, not poems. But I get the pull to create something that lasts." She looked at me then, really looked, her eyes narrowing slightly like she was seeing me fresh. "That's a start," she said, her voice soft but pointed. "Most people don't even try." We sat a while longer, jazz filling the gaps, rain humming steady in the background. It wasn't much, just a scrap of talk, but it felt like the first crack in the wall between us. Heading to my room that night, the house didn't feel so silent anymore. It felt alive, like it was waiting for something to unfold. The house settled into a rhythm in the days that followed its subtle creaks and the city's gentle rain becoming backdrop music to my days. I'd wake to the scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen, lose myself in freelance sketches by the garden window, dreaming up homes I'd likely never build. Nora was woven into the woodwork, her bare footsteps soft, but her energy undeniable. I'd spot her in flashes. Dawn, tending plants with a focus that blurred the world. Late nights, huddled on the porch with jazz and books, lamplight catching loose strands of her hair. Each glimpse pulled at me stronger, a mix of curiosity and something heavier I wasn't ready to name. Our talk stayed small, tentative, like we were both testing the edges of this odd shared space. A nod in the hall, a quick thanks when she'd leave cookies on the counter with a note for the tenant. But every brush made me notice more. How her fingers grazed vine leaves, the subtle smile she'd flash when she thought I wasn't looking, the way her voice softened talking about her garden like it was her one anchor. I told myself I was just settling in, getting used to the house. Truth was, I was getting used to her. One night, sleep wouldn't come. A client had bounced back a design with endless revisions, my head throbbing from screen glare. I padded down to the kitchen for water, hoping it'd clear the fog. The house was dark, save for a soft glow at the counter where Nora sat, hair down for once, spilling over a loose sweater that slipped off one shoulder. She nursed a glass of red wine, her sketch pad open but pencil still, like she'd given up on whatever she was drawing. The air held a faint whiff of wine and something else, lavender maybe, or the rain-soaked wood. "Rough night?" she asked, without looking up, her voice low, nearly swallowed by the quiet jazz from a speaker on the counter. I froze, caught off guard, then leaned against the doorframe. "Yeah," I said, rubbing my neck. "Deadlines?" She glanced at me, her brown eyes catching the dim light. For a second, I saw something raw there, exhaustion, maybe, or deeper. "Sleeplessness," she said simply, sipping her wine. "Too many thoughts?" She paused, then added with a half smile, "Or maybe I'm just hungry for something not in the fridge." I laughed, louder than intended in the still house. "Same here," I said, heading to the sink for a glass. "Deadlines make me forget to eat half the time." She tilted her head, eyeing me with that sharp gaze from day one. "You're too young to skip meals," she said, teasing but gentle. "Sit, I'll pour you a glass." Before I could argue, she slid a second glass across, filling it with wine. I hesitated, then sat, the stool creaking under me. We didn't talk much at first, just sipped, jazz weaving through the quiet. Then she spoke, voice dropping like she was pulling words from deep down. "I used to paint," she said, fingers tracing her pad's edge. "Interiors, mostly. Hours, mixing colors, chasing just the right light. My husband, ex-husband, called it a waste, said I needed a real job, something steady. So I stopped. And he left anyway." She laughed, short and bitter. "Funny how that works. I kept the house. The paint smells, the quiet. He got what he chased." I didn't know what to say. Her words cracked open a window to her I hadn't expected. "That's rough," I managed, voice clumsy. "I mean, quitting something you loved because of him. You didn't deserve that." She looked at me, eyes softening. For a beat, the air thickened, like we'd crossed some unseen line. "Maybe," she said, "but I'm still here. This house, these walls, they're mine, even if they're lonely sometimes." I took a sip, throat tight. "I get it," I said. "I've sketched houses since I was a kid, but sometimes it feels like building for everyone else, not me. Like I'm scared to want something too big." She leaned forward a bit, elbow on the counter, gaze steady. "You're young, Miles. You've got time to want big things. Don't let the quiet swallow you. It's a good place to think. A bad one to hide." Her words hit harder than expected, like she'd seen right through me. I nodded, unable to look away. The jazz played on, soft and melancholic, rain drumming the windows, sealing us in that moment. I didn't know it then, but that night marked the first time the house felt less like a rental and more like soil where something might grow. The quiet I'd craved was weaving into a rhythm I could lean on, My days fell predictable. Sketches and freelance at the desk, rain whispering against the pane, the house's occasional sighs settling around me. Nora lingered like the wood itself, her steps hushed, her presence electric. I'd catch her mornings in the garden, silhouette sharp against morning fog, or evenings on the porch, book in lap, lamp glow slicing the mist. Each sight tugged deeper, a quiet ache I dared not label. One morning, heading out for coffee, an email pinged on my phone. From Nora. Short and to the point. We need to talk rent. Tonight, 8, on the porch. My gut twisted. I'd paid on time, kept things tidy, followed her rules. What had I messed up? Missed a bill? Made too much noise? All day, my mind looped, replaying every glance, every word, wondering if I'd crossed some invisible boundary. By evening, I was a knot of nerves, sketchpad untouched, coffee gone cold. At 8, I stepped onto the porch, air damp and cool, vines dripping from a recent shower. Nora was there already, in her usual chair, a tray with teapot and 2 cups on the table. She wore a loose sweater, hair down for once, curling softly over her shoulders. The lamp cast warm light on her face, easing the lines around her eyes. She looked up as I approached, expression calm, unreadable. "Sit," she said, pouring tea and sliding a cup my way. I settled across from her, hands wrapping the warm ceramic, willing my pulse to slow. "So," I started, voice tighter than I liked. "Rent? Did I screw something up?" She shook her head, lips curving in a faint smile, like she'd anticipated my panic. "No, Miles. You're good. Better than good, even. Quieter than I figured." Her tone was light, but her eyes held mine steady, searching, like she was probing for unspoken words. I exhaled, relief mixing with confusion. "Then what's this about?" She leaned back, fingers tracing her cup's rim. "I don't need the money," she said, voice low and deliberate. "Not really. House is paid off. Work covers the rest. But I need something else." She paused, gaze dropping to the table, then lifting to me. 10 minutes every evening. I want you to read to me. Anything your designs, a book, something you've written, even a grocery list. Just something real. Something you. Do that and rent's half. $400 a month. I stared, brain scrambling to catch up. "Read? Out loud?" I echoed, words sounding dumber spoken than thought. She nodded, smile softening. But vulnerability flickered in her eyes, something new. "Someone used to read to me once," she said. Voice quieter now, almost fragile. Every night, poetry, stories, even his terrible drafts. It made this house feel alive. Then he left, and all I had were bills and silence. "I don't need love, Miles. No promises. I just want to hear a voice again. Someone who's really here." Her words hung heavy, raw honesty squeezing my chest. I saw it now, the loneliness she'd buried under her calm, how this house was both sanctuary and cage. I swallowed hard. "Why me?" I whispered. She met my eyes, steady but kind, like she saw something I missed. "Because you're not just passing through," she said. "I can tell you're searching too, even if you don't know for what." I had no reply. The idea was odd, intimate, in a way I hadn't expected, but it didn't feel wrong. It felt like a door cracking open, just a sliver, to something I couldn't quite grasp. "Okay," I said finally, voice firmer than I felt. 10 minutes a night, I'll do it." Her smile widened, not much, but genuine, like a weight had lifted. "Good," she said, topping off the tea. "Start tomorrow. Pick something that matters to you." Back in my room, rain resuming outside, the house shifted around me. It wasn't just a place to sleep anymore. It was where something was stirring, something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but couldn't turn from. Those nightly readings wove into our ritual a strange, serene thread through the days. Each evening at 9, I'd join Nora on the porch, air thick with rain-damp vines and the low hum of her jazz. I'd bring something to read. Maybe a page from my sketchpad, describing a house with open windows and warm light, or a poem scavenged online. Clumsy in my mouth, but true. Once, even a journal entry scrawled about the drift after college, raw words, awkward aloud. Nora sat across, steaming tea in hand, eyes half closed, listening wordless. She never critiqued, never judged, just nodded at the end, face unreadable but softened, like she clung to every syllable. At first, it felt performative, like acting for an audience of one, but night by night, it shifted. Less about the words, more about sharing them. I started noticing how her shoulders eased as I read, how her lips quirked when I stumbled on a line, how her fingers traced her cup like she was sketching in her mind. And I began craving those moments, the 10 minutes when the house pulsed alive, when it wasn't just me and my laptop against the world. I was seeing Nora, truly. Not just the homeowner, but the woman who'd painted rooms and lost a love, who wore her solitude like a shadow she'd mastered. One night, I read something different. I'd tweaked a client design, a small house with a wide porch, the kind for growing old in. But instead of specs, I pulled a journal entry from the night before, after endless edits. "There's this woman," I began, voice low, words heavier than planned. "She lives behind a door I don't know how to open, not because it's locked, but because I'm scared of what's on the other side, scared of wanting something I can't keep." I stopped, throat closing, realizing too late how true it rang. I glanced at Nora, bracing for her to look away. But her eyes locked on mine, wide, unguarded, lamplight, catching a sheen of moisture. She said nothing for a long stretch, just sat, tea forgotten. Then she rose, sweater slipping off one shoulder, and slipped inside without a word. My stomach dropped. I'd gone too far, said too much. I snapped my pad shut, air turning chill, and climbed to my room, replaying the moment, wondering if I'd shattered the fragile thing we'd built. Sleep barely came that night, rain tallying my mistakes against the pain. Morning brought a folded sheet outside my door, thick, like quality sketch paper. I unfolded it, Nora's drawing. A room with a wide window, sunlight spilling over wood floors, a bed with a comforter, garden visible outside, green and wild. Simple, but alive, every stroke intentional, like she'd poured her soul in. Below, in her neat script, "If you want to sketch a different life, start here." My chest tightened, not just at the art, but what it meant. She'd heard me, really heard. And this was her reply. That night, I hit the porch on edge. Nora was there, hair loose, hands cupped around her mug. I sat, clutching a secondhand poetry book. But before I started, she spoke. "Last night," she said, voice soft but sure, "you read something real, realer than I expected." I swallowed, mouth dry. "Too much?" I asked. She shook her head, eyes meeting mine. "No, it was exactly what I needed to hear. I stopped painting because someone said it wasn't enough. But you're drawing something, Miles. A life, a home. Don't stop out of fear." Her words washed over me like a gentle wave, sweeping away the day's doubt. I nodded, gaze stuck on her. "I won't," I said, barely a whisper. "But only if you don't stop either." She smiled, then a real one. Small but warm. For the first time, we weren't just landlord and tenant, reader and listener. We were two people seeing each other, truly, making the silent house feel full to bursting. I opened the book and read on, voice steadier. As words filled the air, I knew something had shifted, not just in me, but between us. Those readings grew beyond routine. They became a bridge, drawing Nora and me closer, in ways I hadn't foreseen. Each evening, under the porch lamp's glow, rain drumming the roof, vines swaying in the breeze, I'd share poems, design snippets, hasty thought fragments. Her quiet attention weighted the words, made them matter more than they would alone. I'd catch her watching, brown eyes soft in the light, and sometimes she'd smile, that private curve tightening my chest. The house wasn't mere shelter anymore. It was space we shaped together, word by word, night after night. One evening, a fiercer storm hit. Power flickered, then died, plunging us into dark. I grabbed a flashlight from my room and headed down, floorboards groaning. The kitchen held by one candle on the counter, flame casting long shadows. Nora sat alone, hair cascading over shoulders, loose sweater slipping down an arm. She looked smaller somehow, face half-shadowed, hands cradling a mug like it was her only warmth. Air smelled of wax and rain, her usual jazz silent, storm's roar taking its place. Power's out, I said, stating the obvious. Setting the flashlight down. She nodded, eyes flicking to me, then back to the flame. Happens sometimes, she said, voice low, nearly lost in the downpour. Old wiring. I paused, then pulled a stool and sat across, candlelight dancing between us. I'd planned to read a page from a novel on her shelf, but the mood hung heavier. No reading tonight? I asked, aiming light. She shook her head, lips pressing in a faint smile. Not yet. Just sit with me a bit. We did, silence, filled by the storm's low growl. Candlelight played over her face, fine lines by her eyes, the soft curve of her mouth. She seemed weary, not just from the day, but something deeper I'd started noticing in her quiet spells. I wanted to ask to reach across the gap, but words failed. Instead, I said, "You okay?" Softer than meant, like I feared breaking something. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers traced her mug's rim, slow and careful, like choosing words. "Ever found a place you're afraid to stay in?" she asked at last, eyes meeting mine. "Not because it's bad. Because you're scared you'll never want to leave?" Her voice held steady, but a tremor lurked, a rawness I'd never heard. I swallowed, throat tight. "Yeah," I whispered. "Think I'm living in it right now." She looked at me, really looked, eyes wide and bright in the flicker. For a breath, we froze, air thick with unsaid weight. "I'm scared too," she said, voice fading into the rain. "Scared you'll leave like the others. Scared this house turns back to just walls." Her words landed soft but sure, dissolving weeks of careful distance. I reached out, brushing her hand on the counter. She didn't pull away. Her fingers were warm, faintly trembling. I curled mine around them, gentle, tentative. "I'm not leaving," I said, words tumbling free. "Not yet." Her eyes searched mine, and for a second, I thought tears might come. But she squeezed back, light as air, enough to trip my heart. "Don't read tonight," she said, voice near silent over the storm. "Just stay." I nodded, thumb grazing her knuckles. We sat, candle guttering, tempest raging outside. But between us, warm, alive, impossibly close, no kiss, no embrace. Deeper than that, a moment of true seeing, not as landlord and tenant, not divided by years or pasts. Just two souls caught in the same quiet gale. The candle burned low, and neither stirred like we knew releasing would let the moment slip. Storm eased by dawn, leaving the house hushed, save for Vine's soft drip. Power hummed back, kitchen lit by a pale bulb. But the air still carried last night's weight, her hand in mine, words on staying's fear, how we'd sat by candlelight, not a fleeting thing. A turning point, like the house itself had tilted, letting us see what couldn't be unseen. I climbed to my room after, but sleep evaded. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying her voice, her touch, how her eyes had held mine like asking what she couldn't voice. The days after felt altered, though surface stayed same. I read to her evenings, poems, sketches, truths. But now, charge hummed in the air, quiet intensity in how she listened, how her gaze lingered post-reading. We didn't speak of that night, didn't name the growing thing, but it lived in her fingers, brushing mine, passing tea, in catching her watch me from the garden, hands still dirt-dusted. The house felt fuller, breathing with us. Then, weeks on, an email upended it all. A small Portland firm had spotted my portfolio junior designer gig. Steady pay, benefits, real step toward the life I sketched in dreams. But it meant moving, leaving the city, leaving this house. I sat at my desk, staring at the offer, gut churning. Part of me craved the security, the proof. But stronger pull yanked back to Nora, the porch, nights that had become home. I held off, telling her. Kept reading evenings, showing up. But decision loomed like thunder. Finally, night before replying, I couldn't hold it. On the porch, air crisp and damp, jazz low. I'd just finished a poem on a house with open windows. I set the book down, hands shaking. "Nora," I said, voice rougher than planned. "Got a job offer in Portland. Good one." She didn't look up right away. Fingers tightened on her mug. She stared at the vines, leaves dark in dusk. "Congratulations," she said finally, voice even but low, weighing each syllable. "You deserve it." I swallowed, chest aching. Means I'd have to move, I said. Soon. She nodded, still averted. Figured as much, she replied. Softer now, nearly breaking. Houses like this? Not built to hold people forever. Her words stung sharper than expected, like she was releasing me before I chose to go. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, hunting words. This place, I started, voice hushed. It's more than a house to me. You're more than a landlord. These nights, the readings, you listening. It made me feel anchored, not drifting. She turned then, eyes bright but steady. For a beat, I saw the Storm Night woman open, raw. You did that for me too, she said. Brought this house alive again. But Miles, you're young. Build your life. Don't stay just because it's safe. I wanted to argue not safe, but her. But before I could, she stood, sweater slipping, and went inside. I stayed, porch too quiet, jazz fading into rain. Next morning, I left a note, my scrawl messy but true. Nora, thanks for letting me hear my own voice. Never knew quiet could feel so real. Whatever comes, this house you will always be part of me. I slipped it on the kitchen counter and headed to Portland a week later. The job was solid, busy, challenging, all I'd hoped. But nights rang hollow. No porch, no jazz, no Nora. I'd kept her number but didn't call, didn't want to disrupt her world. Then, one rainy afternoon, back in town for a forgotten box, the house looked unchanged. Vines heavy with water, porch light on. Nora wasn't home, but on the kitchen table a new sketch. Her house, 2 windows flung wide. One to the garden, one to the horizon. Below, her neat hand. I renegotiated the rent. You owe me 10 minutes a night still. Next time, read over my shoulder, not across the table. I stood holding it, throat tight. Not a vow, exactly, but an invitation, a door ajar for when I was ready. I folded it carefully, tucked it in my bag, and drove back to Portland, rain smearing the road. I didn't know if I'd read to her again, but I'd carry those nights. Her breath's rhythm as I spoke, how she made me feel seen. For now, that was enough. Goodbye. In the rain's whisper against those climbing vines on an old wooden house, there's a quiet lesson on soul's fragility and shared silence's magic. Picture me a young architect wandering a city's gray indifference, finding not a gleaming loft, but a calm cocoon where Nora, with autumn brown eyes, weaves her solitude into subtle art. What we uncovered, night by night, as poem lines or sketch strokes built fragile bridges, is this. True home isn't walls or sturdy beams. It's voices daring to bare themselves. In a world shouting ambitions, we learned intimacy blooms from courage to hush and hear, not past echoes that scar, like abandoned canvases or fled loves, but a heart's timid beats, fearing attachment. Me, with unfinished drafts, and Nora, with gardens wet from unseen tears, we show that leaving's dread or staying's pull is the unseen thread binding us. And if life, like that candlelit storm drawing us close, teaches love or the tenderness nearing it, thrives in the everyday, that a trembling hand's brush can turn shelter to forever hearth. This isn't fairy tale fluff. It's a moved mirror, reflecting our lone selves, urging us to dare want more, dare linger, dare voice our soul's creased pages aloud. Because in the end, what saves us is true seeing bare, under rain, maskless, promise-free. And you, friends, what have your silent storms taught? Share below a surprise bond that shifted your heart. Those words might light another's path. If this touched you, subscribe for more soul-stroking tales stories where raw life murmurs, stay, live full. Together, let's bridge with words. See you under the rain.